Samuel, a 72-year-old retired firefighter living in Boulder, Colorado, had learned to live with pain, or so he thought. Mornings were the worst. That familiar fire in his joints, the stiff shuffle to the bathroom, the quiet groan as he bent to tie his shoes. For years, he relied on anti-inflammatory meds, icy hot creams, and sheer willpower just to get through the day. His doctors offered no hope beyond managing the pain. But everything changed when Samuel's daughter, a nutritionist, asked a simple question: "Dad, have you ever tried fighting arthritis through food?" Skeptical, he laughed it off. But she insisted and showed him a study, then another. One after another pointed to the power of three unassuming foods: lentils, chickpeas, and tofu. They weren't exotic, they weren't expensive, and yet they were packed with compounds that targeted joint inflammation at its root, not just masked the symptoms. The most stunning part? These foods didn't just reduce swelling, they help rebuild cartilage, strengthen surrounding muscles, and restore lost mobility. Samuel was stunned. Could something so simple really work? He gave it a shot. Lentil soup became his weekly staple. He swapped chips for roasted chickpeas. Tofu stir-fry replaced his usual bacon and eggs. Within 3 weeks, he wasn't just waking up easier. He was back on the hiking trails he once thought were gone for good. You've been told arthritis is forever. That pain is just part of aging. But what if that's not true? What if your greatest relief isn't in a bottle, but in your kitchen? Lentils, chickpeas, tofu, three natural warriors hiding in plain sight. This isn't about going vegan. This is about reclaiming your life, one powerful meal at a time. Press 1 now to discover the top 3 plant-based proteins that naturally ease joint pain and inflammation. Feel the difference today. Samuel had heard health advice before. Low fat this, avoid sugar that. But lentils, chickpeas, tofu? He nearly laughed out loud when his daughter first mentioned them as a solution to his joint pain. After all, how could something so ordinary do what prescriptions had failed to? But one afternoon, as he massaged his aching knees and stared down another sleepless night, something clicked. "What do I have to lose?" he muttered. That night, he made his very first lentil soup, loaded with garlic, turmeric, and leafy greens. The next morning, he added chickpeas to his salad. By the weekend, he was pan-frying tofu with ginger and olive oil. He expected nothing, but within days, something surprising happened. The pain that usually haunted his mornings dulled. The stiffness that made tying his shoes a chore eased. His energy steadier. His sleep deeper. By week 2, he stopped reaching for the ibuprofen. By week 3, he was walking farther, standing taller, and smiling more. But it wasn't just the physical change, it was the hope. For the first time in years, Samuel felt in control. He started researching more. Turns out these 3 plant-based proteins weren't just healthy, they were anti-inflammatory powerhouses, full of magnesium, fiber, potassium, folate, and plant-based omega-3s. They didn't suppress the pain, they healed the inflammation causing it, and they weren't part of some expensive diet plan. They were already in his local grocery store, affordable, simple, real. That was the moment everything changed. Not a new pill, not a surgery, just a shift in perspective, a shift toward healing from the inside out. 3 weeks into his plant-powered routine, Samuel felt like a new man. The pain had eased. His steps were lighter. He was cooking more, smiling more, and for the first time in a long time, he looked forward to mornings. But then came the real shock. At his quarterly checkup, his rheumatologist, Dr. Patel, reviewed his file with raised eyebrows. Your inflammation markers, they've dropped significantly. Samuel chuckled. I haven't touched ibuprofen in 10 days. Dr. Patel looked puzzled. What did you change? Samuel replied simply, I started eating lentils, chickpeas, and tofu. The room went quiet. Then came the response Samuel didn't expect. Keep doing it. For years, all he'd heard was manage the pain. Now the very numbers in his blood showed that he was fighting it at the source. His CRP levels, once high, were now approaching normal. His mobility test scores had improved. Even his blood pressure, which had crept up with age, had begun to normalize. But the most unexpected moment came a week later at his granddaughter's birthday party. Grandpa, spin me, she squealed. In that instant, without hesitation, Samuel scooped her up and twirled her in the air. No pain, no stiffness, just pure, joyful movement. His wife stood frozen, eyes welling up. It had been years since she'd seen that side of him. The family cheered, but inside Samuel knew it wasn't just about food, it was about freedom. A second chance at life that started with a simple decision to change what was on his plate. And all it took was lentils, chickpeas, and tofu. Before this change, Samuel used to measure his days by how much he hurt. Good morning was just another way of saying, let's see how bad it is today. Plans were always tentative, walks were short, laughter was forced. Pain had become a quiet dictator, ruling every part of his life. But after just a month of consistently eating lentils, chickpeas, and tofu, his mindset began to shift. Not just his body, his entire way of thinking. He no longer felt helpless. He no longer waited for prescriptions to fix what his fork could heal. He felt empowered. The kitchen, once just a place for coffee and toast, became his healing ground. He began reading labels, experimenting with anti-inflammatory recipes, and discovering spices like turmeric, cumin, and ginger that added both flavor and relief. For the first time, Samuel saw food not as a routine, but as medicine, real, powerful, natural medicine. He even started teaching a small nutrition class at the local senior center. Dozens showed up, curious, skeptical, just like he had been. And every time someone said, "But I don't want to give up meat," Samuel would smile and say, "You don't have to. Just give lentils, chickpeas, and tofu a chance. Let them share the plate." He watched as the fear in others slowly turned into curiosity, and then hope. Pain used to define his identity. Now he defined it. He wasn't cured, but he was in control, and that made all the difference. It had been nearly 5 years since Samuel set foot on his favorite forest trail in the Flatirons near Boulder. The uneven ground, the rocky steps, the incline, his knees simply couldn't take it. Just the thought of hiking used to trigger a wave of disappointment, but something inside him had changed. With the swelling down and his strength returning, Samuel packed a small bag, water bottle, walking stick, a homemade chickpea wrap, and headed to the trailhead. He didn't tell anyone. This was personal. The air was crisp. The scent of pine filled his lungs. Step by step, he climbed, slowly, steadily. Every footfall was a victory. When he reached the overlook, he stood still. Not just because of the view, but because he did it. The same man who once struggled to climb stairs had now conquered a mountain, powered by food he'd once overlooked. This wasn't just about arthritis anymore. It was about possibility. Samuel saw his life differently now. He began to dream again, of traveling, of dancing with his wife, of playing catch with his grandson. not just watching from a lawn chair. And the best part? He didn't need to overhaul his life. He didn't need that expensive treatments. Just a few strategic changes to his plate. With every lentil soup, every tofu stir-fry, every handful of roasted chickpeas, he wasn't just eating, he was reclaiming his future. Doors he thought were permanently closed began to creak open, and all it took was saying yes to something different, something natural, something powerful. The opportunity was always there. He just needed the courage and the right information to walk through it. Samuel wasn't just walking again, he was living again. With every small victory, he noticed a shift not just in his joints, but in his spirit. The man who once shuffled from room to room now rose with purpose. He no longer planned his days around flare-ups or sat out of family outings. He showed up, fully, joyfully, and without hesitation. What started as a desperate attempt to ease his arthritis pain had turned into a lifestyle transformation. His kitchen became a lab of healing. He explored new recipes, lentil stews with turmeric and kale, Mediterranean chickpea bowls with lemon and herbs, and crispy tofu tossed in anti-inflammatory spices. Each dish wasn't just a meal, it was a message to his body: I'm taking care of you now. He joined a local walking group and started mentoring others with chronic joint pain. His story inspired his neighbors, friends, even his old coworkers. He wasn't trying to convert anyone to a diet. He was simply sharing what worked, what gave him his life back. But the greatest transformation came in how Samuel saw himself. He no longer felt like a burden. He no longer feared decline. He felt strong, capable, and deeply connected to his own well-being. Pain no longer dictated his identity. It became part of his story, not the ending of it. From a man defined by discomfort to one defined by resilience, Samuel proved that healing is not just physical, it's emotional, mental, and deeply personal. And it all began with three humble foods that had been there all along. As Samuel sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the Colorado sky in gold and lavender, he reflected on how far he'd come, not just in miles walked, but in hope restored. He remembered the mornings he dreaded moving, the nights when pain robbed him of rest, and the quiet despair that crept in between. But now he smiled. Not because he was completely free of arthritis, but because he had learned how to fight back. He didn't need miracle drugs or trendy supplements. The answer had been on his dinner plate all along. Lentils, chickpeas, tofu. These weren't just foods, they were tools. Tools that rebuilt his strength, soothed his inflammation, and gave him back the moments pain once stole. Moments like dancing with his wife in the kitchen, walking through his favorite trail, twirling his granddaughter in his arms. Samuel's journey proved a simple truth. Healing doesn't always roar in. It can whisper through a spoonful of soup, through consistency, through real nourishment. Today he shares his story not as a health guru, but as a man who almost gave up, until he realized his greatest weapon wasn't in a pharmacy, it was in his choices. If you're living with chronic pain, feeling like there's no way out, look again. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest changes, and sometimes healing starts not with what you take away, but with what you finally decide to add. Samuel's journey taught a profound truth. Your body is always communicating, and pain is one of its loudest voices. For years, he treated pain as the enemy, but over time, he learned it was actually a signal, a plea for change. Instead of silencing it with pills, he started listening. And that shift from suppression to attention changed everything. The lesson: you are not powerless. Chronic pain does not have to be permanent. The choices you make each day, what you eat, how you move, how you care for yourself, carry more weight than any prescription. Nature has already given us the tools. We just need the courage to use them. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to do everything at once. Just start with one small change, then another, and trust that those quiet, consistent choices can lead to powerful healing. Start simple. Add lentils to your weekly soup. Roast chickpeas with olive oil and spices for a satisfying snack. Experiment with tofu stir fries or toss it into a salad. Try one new recipe a week. Keep a notebook. Track how you feel after meals, energy, stiffness, sleep. Over time, patterns will emerge. Let your body teach you what works. Don't aim for a diet. Aim for a lifestyle shift. Invite your family to try these foods with you. Healing is easier and more joyful when it's shared. And most of all, be patient. Real change takes time. But with consistency and compassion, you can reclaim your health, one bite at a time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and share with your friends. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if today's story touched your heart, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, stay well, and see you in the next story.